There's a moment in every rivalry when something changes. You can't always see it, and you can't always hear it, but you can feel it. A pause that lasts too long, a radio message delivered with just a little too much tension, a move on track that feels less like racing and more like something personal. In Formula One, teammates are never simply teammates. They are reflections, comparisons, threats. They sit in identical machines chasing identical dreams, and that reality alone is enough to poison even the strongest bond. When pressure rises, friendship does not always survive. Sometimes it cracks slowly, sometimes it shatters instantly, but when it breaks, it almost never returns to what it once was. These are the stories of rivalries that crossed the line between competition and betrayal. Rivalries that destroyed trust, eroded respect, and left emotional damage long after the engines fell silent. Long before they became Red Bull teammates, the tension between Mark Webber and Sebastian Vettel was already forming. A wet and chaotic race in Japan in 2007 ended with a collision, the kind that might seem insignificant at first, but quietly plants a seed of resentment. Years later, when they finally shared a garage, that seed had grown into something far more dangerous. Webber was the seasoned veteran, proud of his experience and determined not to be overshadowed. Vettel was the young prodigy, hungry, relentless, and convinced he was destined for greatness. As Red Bull became a winning team, the rivalry intensified. They collided on track while fighting for victories, and small incidents began to feel deliberate. At Silverstone in 2010, when the team removed a new front wing from Webber's car to give it to Vettel, the message felt clear. One driver was being chosen as the future, and the other was being left behind. But the true breaking point came in Malaysia in 2013. The team issued a clear instruction to both drivers to hold position and bring the cars home safely. Webber led the race, trusting that order. Vettel did not. He attacked his teammate, ignored the instruction, and took the win. Even though he later apologized, the damage was irreversible. Webber felt betrayed not just by Vettel, but by the idea that loyalty in Formula One was nothing more than an illusion. From that moment forward, their relationship was never the same, and the phrase multi-21 became a symbol not of strategy, but of broken trust. The rivalry between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton did not begin with friendship, but it evolved into something equally destructive. The 2021 season became one of the most intense championship battles in the sport's history. Every race felt decisive. Every point felt like survival. Verstappen represented the future, raw and fearless, while Hamilton carried the weight of history as one of the greatest drivers the sport had ever seen. With so much at stake, neither man was willing to yield. The pressure turned every wheel-to-wheel battle into a psychological confrontation. At Silverstone, a high-speed collision sent Verstappen into the barriers, while Hamilton went on to win the race. The incident shifted the tone of the entire season. It was no longer just competition, it was conflict. Later, at Monza, both drivers crashed out after refusing to concede position, eliminating themselves in a moment that perfectly symbolized their stubbornness. Interviews became tense, public statements became loaded, and every action was scrutinized. By the end of the season, the rivalry had left visible scars, not just on the championship, but on the way both drivers were perceived and on the emotional weight they carried forward. Respect still existed, but it was buried under the consequences of a season that pushed both men beyond their limits. In 1994, the rivalry between Michael Schumacher and Damon Hill unfolded under the shadow of tragedy and uncertainty. Schumacher began the season in dominant fashion, winning race after race and building what seemed like an unbeatable lead. Hill, however, refused to fade into the background. As Schumacher faced penalties, disqualifications, and a race ban, Hill capitalized and steadily closed the gap. By the time the championship reached its final race, the difference between them was just a single point. The pressure was unbearable. Every corner felt like destiny. Schumacher led the race with Hill close behind, waiting for an opportunity. When Schumacher made a mistake and ran wide, Hill saw his chance. Moments later, the two cars made contact. Schumacher retired on the spot. Hill's car was damaged beyond repair. The championship was decided not by a clean duel, but by an incident that would be debated for decades. Hill later spoke of the emptiness of the moment, of knowing how close he had come, and how quickly it had slipped away. Their rivalry did not end with reconciliation or closure, only with lingering questions and unresolved emotions. The story of Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg is perhaps the most painful of all because it began with genuine friendship. They grew up racing together, sharing tracks, ambitions, and dreams long before Formula One fame arrived. When both reached Mercedes and the team became dominant, the dream of winning together turned into a nightmare of competing against each other. At first, the tension was subtle, hidden behind polite smiles and careful words. But soon the cracks became impossible to ignore. Accusations emerged over qualifying incidents. On-track clashes damaged races, and trust slowly eroded. By 2016, the rivalry had become suffocating. Every session felt like psychological warfare. The collision in Barcelona, where both Mercedes drivers crashed into each other and eliminated themselves, symbolized just how far the relationship had fallen. Rosberg ultimately won the championship that year, but instead of celebrating a long reign, he chose to retire immediately. He admitted that the mental and emotional cost of fighting Hamilton had been overwhelming. Their friendship did not end in a dramatic explosion. It simply dissolved into distance, into something cold and distant, a reminder that some bonds cannot survive the pursuit of greatness. The rivalry between Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost transcended sport and became legend. When Senna joined Prost at McLaren in 1988, they formed the most formidable driver pairing Formula One had ever seen. At first, the partnership seemed productive, even friendly, but tension quickly grew. Prost accused Senna of dangerous driving, while Senna believed Prost was manipulating politics behind the scenes. Trust vanished, replaced by suspicion and hostility. Their championship battles reached their climax at Suzuka, where collisions decided titles in consecutive years. In 1989, contact between them led to Senna's disqualification and Prost claiming the championship. Prost later said he could no longer work with Senna and left the team. In 1990, history repeated itself in brutal fashion when they collided again at the start, handing the title to Senna. Their rivalry produced some of the most dramatic moments in motorsport history, but it also left behind bitterness and regret. Two of the greatest drivers who ever lived could never truly find peace with one another during their careers. In 2007, McLaren experienced one of the most toxic internal battles in its history. Fernando Alonso arrived as a two-time world champion, while Lewis Hamilton entered as a rookie. From the very first races, it became clear that Hamilton was not there to learn quietly. He was there to compete, and he was immediately fast enough to challenge Alonso. Tension grew throughout the season, fueled by team politics, controversial decisions, and mounting frustration on both sides. The situation reached its breaking point during qualifying in Hungary when Alonso deliberately delayed in the pit box, preventing Hamilton from completing his final lap. The incident led to penalties and publicly exposed the fractured relationship inside the team. Despite having arguably the strongest driver lineup on the grid, McLaren lost the championship that year. Their downfall was not due to lack of speed, but due to internal conflict, proving once again that when teammates become enemies, everyone loses. In 1982, Ferrari's internal rivalry between Gilles Villeneuve and Didier Pironi became one of the most tragic stories in the sport. During the race at Imola, the team signaled both drivers to slow down. Villeneuve interpreted the message as an instruction to hold position. Pironi interpreted it differently and chose to continue racing. He overtook Villeneuve and won. Villeneuve felt betrayed and was visibly furious, believing his teammate had broken an unspoken agreement. He reportedly vowed never to speak to Pironi again. Tragically, Villeneuve was killed in an accident during qualifying just 2 weeks later. The conflict was never resolved. Pironi later suffered a career-ending injury the same year. What began as a misunderstanding between teammates ended as one of the most haunting stories in Formula One history. A reminder that sometimes there is no opportunity for forgiveness. These rivalries gave fans unforgettable moments, dramatic overtakes, championship-deciding collisions, and legendary seasons that will be remembered forever. But behind the spectacle lies a darker truth. Every rivalry comes with a cost. Broken trust, lost friendships, emotional scars that drivers carry long after their careers end. Formula One celebrates speed, precision, and excellence, but it also exposes the fragility of human relationships under extreme pressure. Because in the end, the most dangerous opponent is not always the driver in another team. Sometimes the most dangerous rival is the one wearing the same colors, driving the same car, and chasing the same dream.